This is Let's Talk Teens, a parenting podcast sharing tips on raising amazing teenagers. We are both certified life coaches that have worked with teenagers as coaches, mentors, and teachers. We are sharing what we have found to work best when dealing with teens and tough issues.
This is Let's Talk Teens with Abbi and Cheree, episode 72, Heated Politics and Your Teen.
Cheree, I was excited to talk about this, not because I love politics. I actually hate politics. I am the least political person you will probably ever meet. But I think we live in a world where you cannot ignore what is going on right now. And you cannot ignore all the political banter on both sides. Like, I don't recall a time in my lifetime where I felt like both sides are so intense on their own views and so intense against the other side, right? And so I wanted to share some advice. I wanted to chat with you about how we help our teens navigate heated politics in this world because they're seeing it online. They're talking about it at school. And teenagehood is a time when your youth is deciding their opinions about politics. And they're really going to either mirror your ideas or they might actually push against them, right? So this could be something that gets a little bit heated in your home. And so I want to talk about how do we handle that as a parent when it comes to politics?
Oh, I love this topic. I'm like you. I'm not a big fan of politics, but I realize that it's a big deal. And boy, don't we as humans just love our opinion, whatever it is. And man, we're right. Whatever it is, I'm right. Whatever my views are, they're right. Abbi, they're
Yeah.
right.
Well, and I love that too because obviously we're going to have political affiliations. We're going to have our person we vote for, what we believe.
Exactly. Yeah.
But when it comes to your teen, and I would spread this even to your children, the number one thing that I want you to take away from this episode is that you are going to offer hope for the future. A teenager already feels like their future is scary and daunting. And then when we throw rhetoric, like fire to the rhetoric of if this person's in office, like the whole nation's going to shut down. Or if this person wins office, there's going to be none of this and this and this for you, right? Because in a teen's brain, even though I know this is not true, but in a teen's brain, they look at their parents and go, well, you're going to die tomorrow. And I'm the one that's got to live out this awful future, right? And so offer hope for the future. And that really is in how we talk about these events. It's in how we talk about the future. And we want to be sure that we are somebody letting our teen know your future is amazing. It doesn't matter who's in office. There's going to be hard things. There's going to be wonderful things. And that your future is bright. And it can, like, yes, obviously politics and Washington and all those kind of things like will impact us in some ways, but not as big as social media or the news wants to make you believe it will.
I love that so much. One thing I've noticed is, especially with all the social media that we have, it's all right tailored on our algorithm of what we're looking for. So you and I could be getting very different information politically on our feeds just because of what I look at versus what you look at, and we could be getting totally different messages. And so I think it's so easy to get in that negative spiral because like this is what I'm hearing and you're like no, but this is what I'm hearing. And I love that of just like the future is bright. And we don't really know all the things that are true, but we know that like where our power lies or where our control lies and lies, and that we have a bright future if we choose to. Like we can
Yes.
move forward with our goals, and we don't have to listen to all that rhetoric.
And that goes perfectly, like, and a point I wanted to make on here too is don't play into conspiracy theories. If we don't know something's true, let's not bring it up at family dinner. Let's not feed into, I heard this, right? Because for a teen, yes, they are striking into their own independence. They might be, challenging some of your core beliefs as a family, all those kind of things, but they look to you for that reassurance. They look to you for going, wow, if my mom is worried about this, or if my dad is really thinking this is real, that becomes like my frame of reference as a teenager of, oh, then this really must be real, or this really might have truth to it. And so we don't ever want to play into the conspiracy theories, things that we don't know are true, because your teen might take that as gospel truth, right? They might take that as the scary future that's out there. And guess what? We don't even know if it's real, right? We don't even know half. And honestly, half of what I see online, I'm like, that's not even true. That's not even real, right? So don't play into those conspiracy theories or things that we just don't know are true. And
Love
then
it.
another thing is that we really want to model good behavior and mirror that golden rule, right? Of we wouldn't want to say something to somebody else, regardless of their political beliefs or affiliation, that we wouldn't want said to us or labeled for us. And I had like this, I don't know, I didn't even realize it at the time, but this really life, like, I don't know, changing experience when I was a teenager because it was a political election and I wasn't old enough to vote yet, but I was getting close and I was old enough to like notice and know who the candidates were. And I knew who my parents were voting for. And I remember saying to my mom, "Oh, mom, I just hope our guy wins, and just I really hope that this election goes that way, just dipping my toes into politics, right? As a teenager." And I'll never forget my mom said to me, she goes, "You know what, Abby? I really hope he wins too. But if this other guy wins, it's going to be fine. They're both really good men." And I just remember being like, "Oh, okay." Right? And like, I had no idea how profound of like an impact that had on me that I was like, you know what? It is all going to be fine. And I just loved that little teaching from my mom that I feel like really mirrored that golden rule of, hey, the future is bright and I would want people to talk nicely about me as they say about other people. And I get you might feel really strongly listening to this of like, well, it's not going to be okay, Abby, if that other person wins, right? And that's okay. We don't have to fully agree with something that we don't believe to be our truth, but like let's offer that kindness, that hope, that just reassurance to our youth that you know what? It's all going to be okay. Like it all shakes out.
It really does. One thing that's really helped me, just this is just the stage of life I'm in, but I have, married children and I have, they the same political views are shared all amongst everyone.
Mhm.
Like there's, people that have differing views and opinions and even, Republican, Democrat. Like we just have that's great. But I think what I've learned is there's good people on both
Everywhere.
sides or all the sides, because now there's even more than two sides, but like there's good people in all those party affiliations and all those beliefs. And so I think it is goes back to like, you know what, holding space for there's good people and maybe we don't have that same belief system or we don't agree with something, we still can remember that there's good people in all the parties. There
Mhm.
really are.
I love that. And so I was thinking, Cheree, like, like let's pretend a world event has happened, right? And it's getting politicized. I think it's really powerful to talk to your teen and say, this thing that happened was wrong, or this was not how like this should have gone, but point out the good people on both sides. Like, look at what this person's doing, look at what this person's doing, and how we're trying to come together, right? And really fighting that narrative. And, just kind of the last thought on this is I always remind my teens that I work with that the world has always been crazy. And I know that that sounds like the most negative thought, but it actually is like the most hope-filled, like positive thought of guess what? The world, every political election has always been insane and high stakes, and people have always been mad about who wins or who loses. And I actually find so much peace in knowing that I actually live in a time of history where I'm not worried about my safety like people were 2000 years ago, right? And so I just think it's so powerful to remind your youth that hey, this is not a new story. I know it seems like it's a new story being told, but the world has always had intense beliefs. It's always had people fighting on both sides, and that this is kind of normal. And I know I don't know what you think about that, Sheree, but I'm like, that actually brings me a lot of hope. I know that sounds like it's negative, but it brings me a lot of hope.
No, I totally agree with you because I just think in all things in life there's contrast. There's always, opposition. There's always opposites. There's always contrast. And so it's like you said, it's been around forever and we might live in a time where we hear about it more because we have more access
Yes.
to everything.
Yes.
But even realizing there, like just because we have more access doesn't mean, everything we hear is true. We've talked about that because news dramatic news sells.
Hmm.
So but it's so hopeful to know like we're going to be fine. From the beginning of time, there's been conflict and contrast in political views and different way people see things, and we're gonna be fine. I like that. It
Yeah.
brings me a lot of hope too.
And just in closing, I do think it's powerful as your, youth is growing up and being a teenager to ask them their opinions, especially about world events and being like, "Man, did you see this?" Right? Or sometimes I know I'll post on my social media and I'll say, like, this is not a good time for teens to be online right now, right? So sometimes as a parent stepping in and say, "Hey, I don't know if you heard about this event, but maybe because of that, I really want you to be careful about what videos, you're searching up because I just don't want you to see these things." Or, "Hey, let's talk about this as a family,"
I love
versus
that.
letting
Yeah.
your youth stumble upon it in the media first, right? Those are things to just be aware of.
I love the idea of like, okay, this is what's going on that we're hearing all over the news. Let's as a family talk about it. And
Yeah.
let's just like, what do we think about it? And what are, and just and hold that space for everyone to maybe even have different opinions or views, but that in your own family you feel safe talking about them, you know, even again with different views or opinions that like let's just talk about this. And knowing that no one is for sure right or wrong. It's just let's just talk about what we're thinking and feeling about this world event or these politics. Love that.
And, don't be shocked. Your teen might pick the most radical opposite opinion than you. And that's just part of like them figuring it out, right? Like that might be them, pushing against. And we don't even have to, be freaked out by that because we're going to go, "Oh, that's part of teenage development, right? They're figuring out their own opinion and we can just listen." So we hope this helps you out. We know there's a lot of things going on. And sometimes I sure you have to be like, "Oh, I just don't want to be online right now because it makes me sad or it really freaks me out." So, good luck with all those heated politics and navigating that with your youth. But we know that if you'll follow these tips, it'll help you out. So we can't wait to see you in our next episode. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Teens with Cheree Murdock and Abbi Winslow. If you are looking for more tips to help your teenager, here's where you can find us. You can find Cheree Murdock on Instagram at Cheree Murdock Coaching or on her website, ChereeMurdock.com. You can find me, Abbi, on Instagram as Abbi Winslow or on my website, AbbiWinslow.com. Please rate and review our podcast and share with a fellow parent. Thanks for listening.